Hi Viola Kingdom, I'm James. As a violist, viola jokes are a part of my life. I love some of them, I hate some of them, and today I'm going to show you my opinions of which jokes fall into each of those categories and all the in-betweens using a tier list. First, we're going to go through Classic FM's top viola jokes of all time, and we'll see how they did. Starting off with a classic, how do you keep a violin from being stolen? Put it in a viola case. I think this one isn't too bad. I actually like the antithesis of this joke a lot better. Like if you leave your viola in a practice room, then you'll come back and find 3 more piled on top of it. But still, it's a little bit creative, so I'm gonna give it a C tier to start off. Next, what's the similarity between lightning and a violist's fingers? They never strike the same place twice. Unfortunately for violists, we do wield a very large instrument, and intonation can be a challenge because we're stretching so much. So unfortunately, sometimes our fingers do struggle to strike the same place twice, and the comparison to lightning is quite accurate. I'm gonna give this joke a B tier, nothing crazy yet. What's the difference between the first and last desk of the viola section? About half a bar. Unfortunately, in my experience, both at local youth orchestras and at conservatory level orchestras, this is true sometimes. I also just like the presentation of this joke. I feel like the punchline is just pretty unexpected. So this one's going in B tier. How do you get 2 violas to play in tune with each other? Ask one of them to leave. I don't think this is a great joke. I mean, any 2 people trying to play in unison, it's never going to be completely perfect. It's a little bit creative, but not any more than it's just putting down violists. So I'm going to say C tier. What's the difference between a violist and a dog? A dog is able to stop scratching. I like this joke a lot. I'm personally a big fan of dogs, and being compared to one makes me happy. As a violist, when I'm trying to project under my ear, I create a lot of scratch sounds, and you have to look past that when you're making a big sound in a hall because the audience won't hear the scratches. Either way, I find this joke very relatable, and as I said, I love dogs. So this is going to be our first A tier. Why don't violists play hide and seek? Because nobody would look for them. Oh, that's really sad. I don't think it's true. You know, actually, in my experience socially, everybody loves violists. Everyone just knows that we're the chillest people in the orchestra. I think if we played hide and seek, everybody would look for us first. They like us. I think this is just a failure of a joke. F tier. What's the only thing a violinist can do better than a violist? Play the viola. I hate this joke as well. I made a whole video about this topic about 2 years ago, but basically when violinists just pick up a viola and try to play it the same way they would play a violin, it has none of the personality that a viola needs, as well as many nuances in the technique. So it's just simply not true. You're just putting down violists with this joke. I think it's another F tier. What's the difference between a violist and a pizza? A pizza can feed a family of 4. Unfortunately, in our modern society, at least in America, this is the case for many musicians, not just violists. The comparison between a violist and a pizza is pretty ridiculous. I like that. I think it deserves a C tier. What's the difference between a viola and a coffin? Coffins have dead people on the inside. As I was saying earlier, due to its large size and unnatural position, viola just kind of makes you stay in place. So I can see why people think violas just look dead when they're playing. The punchline's pretty good with this joke as well. I think it's going to be another A tier. What's the difference between a viola player and a vacuum cleaner? You have to plug in a vacuum cleaner before it sucks. This is another classic. I personally like it. The only thing that bothers me is in this image, the carpet is way too long to be vacuumed. It would all just get stuck in the vacuum. I don't know what's going on at Classic FM. They're just ruining their vacuums. Either way, I think it's a pretty solid joke. B tier. How can you tell when a violist is playing out of tune? You can see the bow moving. I don't like this joke at all. I feel like it's possible that it could be funny with the right context. For example, if you were doing a quartet coaching and you were saying a bunch of serious things and you just threw this joke out there, nobody would be expecting it. But especially among other viola jokes, you already know the punchline from the start and it's not even that funny. I think it's a D tier. We are now out of the Classic FM phase of this video. Thank goodness. And now on to the list I made of the viola jokes that I think are just the most popular. How do you get a viola player to play a passage pianissimo tremolando? Mark it solo. Yeah, especially if you've just been playing something really loud and you have a lot of adrenaline going. I remember after one of my college auditions, I played Bartok and went straight to Bach D minor, and it was more of a tremolando kind of opening. I think also for viola, the strings just don't resonate as easily, so the shakes can be heard a little bit more. I think this is a decent joke, nothing crazy though, so it's going to be B tier. Why do you find viola players standing outside people's houses? They can never find the right key. and they don't know when to come in. I think this is a classic joke. I personally like it. It's a very creative setup of the punchline. It's a pretty good pair of puns, and I think it works well. I'm gonna give it an A tier. What's the difference between a viola and a trampoline? You take your shoes off to jump on a trampoline. This is one of those jokes that just puts a ridiculous image in your head. I guess for musicians, we all just have that intrusive thought of just like destroying our instrument once in a while. I would never, just to be clear. But the image of just jumping on your viola with shoes on is still pretty funny, so I'm gonna give it a B tier. What's the difference between a violin and a viola? The viola burns longer. This joke makes no sense to me, and unfortunately, it's like one of the most popular jokes. It's just, it implies that you're burning both a violin and a viola, and in a life-threatening situation like that, the viola is clearly more valuable. So I don't even see how this is a viola joke, and it's not even that funny. Even worse, now people just spam comments firewood on all my YouTube Shorts videos. And I picture all those people as being 12-year-olds that can't even sit through Eine Kleine Nacht music without watching Subway Surfers on TikTok. For me, firewood goes straight to the bottom. F tier. Why is a viola called Brach in Germany? Because that's a sound it makes when you sit on it. This is another one that just puts a ridiculous image in your head. I personally like it. It also makes me think of a sneeze. Brach! Yeah, that's how violas sneeze. I think it's short but simple and effective. A tier. How is a viola different from an onion? No one cries when you cut up a viola. You know, I get really upset when my viola is just slightly damaged. So cutting up a viola, I would cry so much. I feel like this joke is just more mean to viola as an instrument than it is funny. So I'm gonna put it at D tier. Why is a viola like a lawsuit? Everyone's happy when the case is closed. I guess this one's alright. It's a little bit creative, nothing too crazy though. I think it belongs in B tier. What do you call someone who hangs around musicians? A violist. This joke sucks. It's not creative at all. It's literally just bullying violists. It's an F tier joke if I've ever seen one. Okay, next I just want to share one of my own viola jokes that I came up with when I was making this list. So I'll leave it up to you guys to rank it. Did you know the most famous violist in history was put on a cereal box? His name is Captain Crunch. I hope you liked the pun there. What's the latest crime wave in New York City? Drive-by viola recitals. This is like one of my favorite short jokes. I actually go to school in New York City, and sometimes I go busking in Central Park. I feel so seen by this joke, and also the thought of just seeing a violist like standing out of the skylight in the car, just playing some Walton down Broadway. It's just so funny to me. I think this is an S tier joke. What's the difference between a viola and a lawnmower? You can tune the lawnmower. I guess this is sort of true sometimes, like in the winter we all have those days where our instrument just doesn't want to stay in tune. Usually if you feel like you can't tune your viola at all, you should just put on new strings. But I feel like it's not just applicable to viola, it could be any string instruments, so I think this joke belongs in D tier. What's the range of a viola? 35 yards if you've got a good arm. In my heart, I dislike this joke. But on the surface, it's just one of those intrusive thoughts I feel like every musician probably has, where you just want to grab your viola and go, yee! I would never do that. That would be terrible. But it's fun to imagine sometimes. I think this is an A tier. The last 3 jokes on this list are a little bit longer, but I promise you they're some of my favorites and they are well worth the time for the punchline. A violist in an orchestra was crying and screaming at the oboe player sitting directly behind him. The conductor asked, "What are you so upset about?" The violist replied, "The oboist reached over and turned one of the pigs on my viola, and now it's all out of tune." The conductor asked, "Don't you think you're overreacting?" The violist replied, "I'm not overreacting. He won't tell me which one." I don't think this would ever actually happen in real life. Violists generally do know how to tune their instruments. I feel like if I didn't know how to tune my viola though, one of my friends would do this to me and it would be really funny. I think this joke is going to be an A tier for me. So next we have an amazing joke which violinist Ray Chen told to principal violist of the Berlin Philharmonic, Amihai Gross, on a live stream. I could retell it, but he did such a good job, I'm just going to show a clip from that.
Mihai was a violist in a local community orchestra in Jerusalem. Mihai stops by the shuk, right? The market, and he finds this mysterious lamp. He rubs it, and a genie appears.
"I am the magic genie of the lamp. I will grant you 3 wishes."
And then he's like, well, I would like to be the best violist in the country. And then poof, like Mihai becomes the principal violist in the Israel film. A few months later, Mihai returns to the genie. He rubs it again. He's like, make me the best violist in the world. And poof, Mihai was made the principal violist of the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra. After some time, though, Mihai returns to the genie for his third wish. He says, Genie, I want you to make me better than any violist has ever been. The genie acknowledged the request. And poof, Mihai found himself in the back of the second violin in his local community orchestra in Jerusalem. Mazel tov!
So I like everything about this joke other than the basic premise, which is that even the greatest violist in the world is worse than the worst violinist. But other than that, it's like a really fascinating story as it's going along, and it doesn't give away the punchline. You know something's gonna happen with the third wish, but you have no idea what. I'm gonna give it an A tier. And finally, we have my personal favorite viola joke of all time. It is definitely the longest joke on the list though, so sit tight. A man called Horace went on a safari with a bunch of other people and some native guides. They traveled on foot, going deep into the jungle, and Horace came to notice that there was a constant drumming noise in the background. He asked the leader of the guides what the drumming was. He got no answer, just a stony silence. The drumming continued all day and all night for the next several days. In fact, as they traveled deeper into the jungle, the drumming got even louder. Finally, one morning, after days of march into this drumming, which by now was sounding quite ominous, the drums suddenly stopped. The native guides screamed and ran into the jungle to hide in the undergrowth. The leader remains behind with his charges, but he was trembling with fear. Horace asked, "What is wrong? Why have the drums stopped?" The native guide replied, "Very bad." "Why?" asked Horace, who was expecting the worst. The guide answered, "When the drums stop, very bad. Next comes viola solo." As a violist myself, I agree, we all dread the viola solo. Sometimes they turn out lovely, but there's always a lot of stress and worry that goes into them. Either way, this joke just has such an amazing narrative build-up that sets up the punchline so well, so it has to be S tier. Very top of my list. Now we're at the end of our tier list. If we look back, we see that Classic FM didn't do a great job, but I don't think any of us were that surprised. For me, the difference is some jokes just aren't funny and they're just putting down violists. Those are all at the bottom. The ones that are creative and think of viola in a different way, often with a pun, I usually find those really funny, or just like the slapstick humor ones. If you're gonna comment a viola joke online, just make sure it's one of the good ones and not just one that's putting down violists, because that's basically the same thing as bullying and that's stupid. As you can see, I do love many viola jokes though, and I think they're a great contribution to society, for violists as well as any other musicians. I hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me if you agree or disagree in the comments down below, or if you have any other viola jokes that I missed. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end, and see you next time. Viola King out.